Sadly, I've been the kind of person that would always, in the back of my head, be telling myself, well, I will be more better, or I will try harder, or like somehow, like in this very even confident, almost like knowing mindset towards things that I knew I could be a better version of myself, and I knew I will at some point. Or I knew, I'll try harder at whatever it is, or I'll implement whatever you know, the thing that I want to do that's going to help me in my life. But I would rationalize and say, well, I'm not there yet, or I'm just not ready, or at some point I will, or when I'm ready, I'll be more like that because I know I can, I know I will. And it had this very like almost like cocky mindset, like, yeah, what's wrong with it? What's wrong with even the way I'm thinking? And I'd have this towards relationships, meaning if I'm dating someone, or I'm with someone and they're my person, I'd be telling myself, well, I could be more vulnerable, I could be more open-hearted and stuff like that. And I knew that I wasn't, but I knew that I could, and I just wasn't ready for that. And I'd have the same mindset with like waking up a little early to take care of myself somehow. Maybe that would be exercising, doing some kind of meditation. But generally, exercising was like the thing in my head. But it could be anything, It could be that I would, straighten up a little bit, just so I don't have to do it later, or even just take my time getting ready in the morning, setting that alarm, even an extra 10, 15 minutes. But really my mindset was, I knew that I would be the kind of person that would wake up like an hour early just to get in like a 20, 30-minute exercise or something. And that was always like something in my head, like, oh, I could do that. I'd do that, And I even tried it for a long time. Even waking up a couple hours beforehand, because I knew overall that would probably be beneficial to me because I'll have a better sleep schedule. I'll struggle immensely in the beginning, I knew, but I'll also be able to integrate, getting whatever I want to get done in the morning. And that was just like my mindset. Oh, I'll do that. I'll get there. Trying to do it was almost impossible. I'd even like down coffee, but be still excruciatingly tired that I couldn't even fight through that, and just would say and sleep, even with like 8 to 12 ounces of coffee in me. I was just too tired. Or I struggled to work through the tiredness even with caffeine, and it was like there was something really still missing. Yeah, I'd say maybe I didn't go to bed early enough, or I didn't get good sleep. But that and my relationship mindset, like it's very similar, because I'd be basically saying, well, maybe I'm just not ready, or eventually I'll be able just to do this with no problem. And what I've come to realize is, you can't just make your life better. At least I can't. As much as I say I could, or add something to my life that's going to make it better somehow. Like I'll be more healthier, I'll be more physically fit, I'll be more whatever it is. And even in relationships, it would be such a better relationship if my heart was more open, I was more vulnerable, and I knew I could easily do it. But that and the exercise thing never really landed, never really worked, never really happened. And what I'd like to say, if anyone can relate to this, is what I believe now really is the reason why I had these mindsets, is because that's what I ultimately wanted. I ultimately wanted that, but and because I wanted it, I thought I could do it. But I didn't realize there's like two realities at play, which I couldn't differentiate between. They seem like the same thing. Like if you really want something, you know you're going to do it. What makes you think you're not going to do it? You know? But what I realized was, although that's what I really ultimately wanted, I couldn't really do it. Not because it just wasn't the right timing, or I didn't have the right motivation or intelligence or even experience. What I realized was I struggled ultimately really to just care about my own existence. Just care that I ultimately cared about this life, this experience I'm having, within any part of it, that it had meaning to me. Just knowing I exist at the very basic level needed to have I don't know, this meaningful emotion, like this matters. And that never really existed. Although if I was to question myself with the way I'm questioning or talking about it now, if this was to take place when I supposedly had these mindsets, I think I would have blew it off. Like, what are you talking about? I care about myself. But eventually, I realized I really don't. Because when you care about yourself, yeah, actions pretty much portray that. But I'd like to say, just that's not really the truth. How do you know if you really matter? If you could say, well, I do all this stuff, or I, any action, any way you act, anything you do. So obviously, if you take care of yourself, or whatever the degree, or even your own home or your family, you could say, well, I care about myself, because why else would I be doing that? Well, I'd like to say that may not necessarily even be true. You might be doing it for other reasons. Like, it's important to you for some reason. It makes you feel like, you're a provider, or you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, or you need to do, because if you didn't, then what would happen? So the real truth would be, you're doing it for other reasons other than that you actually care about your own existence. That your own existence matters. That in a way you mean everything to yourself. And what I realized was, at least in my experience of life, that the more I actually feel like I matter, see, it's an emotion. It's not necessarily a thought. It's an emotion. And we could say, well, the thought creates the emotion, however you want to look at it, but either way, the emotion has to resonate. Just like any emotion you have, you feel it. When you feel happy, you feel happy. When you're laughing, it feels good. When you're any feeling you have, you could say, well, this is the feeling, and I'm feeling it, therefore I'm experiencing it. And all I'd like to say is, you have to experience whatever the emotion is that you're happy and you love just existing, with really nothing else attached to that to create meaning. Because what I think could happen is, if you think you really love yourself, you may not realize, what is it about yourself that you love? That's a great question. And if anyone was to question themselves, well, what do I love about myself? Why do I love myself? Well, you could say you love how your character traits are, how you treat others, how you, maybe you think you're a respectful or a caring or an empathetic or an understanding person. You might like how you laugh, or how you just interact with others, or how you have your personality traits. You might like any personality trait about yourself. You might say, I really love myself because look how I treat others, or look how I live my life. I try to take care of myself, or I love how I really work hard at my life, or I love, the things that I've learned and the things I'm experiencing. I'm looking forward to continuing just experiencing more of whatever it may be. I love, how I have a family and my children, and I love, taking care of them and being a part of them, and, making that really important, because it ultimately is the most important thing in my life. I love my, you can go on and on and on with whatever it is that you love about yourself, or you love why you say you love yourself, and why you say your life has all this meaning. And I'm not discounting any of that at all. All I'm going to say is, at least to me, right, in my experience, I'd like to say, if I was to agree to any of that in my life, I'd say I'm not really telling the truth. Because to me, love, while all that stuff is important, none of that is about the very basic, core absence of everything except one thing: just existing. And if I can't have just existing be the most meaningful thing to me, I don't think all the other things would be as meaningful. I think I would think they were meaningful, but I'd find eventually how difficult it is emotionally to have those to being a part of my life to such a degree. Or physically, or mentally, I'd be struggling to keep up, to try, to make it. And I'd like to say, either way, it's not that it would be easy regardless, but if you loved yourself with just who you are, without having anything that really makes that meaningful other than that you come to this understanding, you just matter regardless. You're the most important to you regardless. Then I think life in general would just be easier. It wouldn't be easier per se, because it still would be difficult, but because you have this ultimate feeling about you, how you go about everything would, in a way, be a mirror, be a projection. We could say be a part of how you ultimately feel about you deep down. And I think in essence, everything would be a little bit easier, because it wouldn't be as emotionally, it wouldn't be such a struggle. It would still be a struggle. It just wouldn't be as much. And anyone could say, well, how do you have all these responsibilities? Or how do you, have all these things you have to do? You have a family, you have this, you have that. You have to take care of this person or whatever. Or you have all this going on in your life. How do you do it all? I'd go nuts. I think if you really, to me, it's going to come down to how you have you at the center of your life. it could sound very cliche or very like, well, how do you do that? Or you think you have it all together? Or blah, 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 blah. Well, no, I don't. But I feel like that is the main ingredient to a successful life. Successful life meaning you feel good throughout your life. You're happy throughout your life. That's all really to me a successful life is. Everything else that happens for the good or for the worse, I'm not saying there wouldn't be ideas of if that was successful or not, but that's not me. Those are just experiences, and I'm not trying to just minimize and downplay, well, they're just experiences. No, they could be very significant, very impactful, very like they stay with you for the rest of your life, in your mind, in your memory, in your emotions. So I'm not trying to negate that at all. But the only way that would even be so significant is if I really had myself to begin with. So what I ultimately find happening here is, and I hope it continues to happen, is waking up early, or meeting that right person that I'm going to have that relationship with and I'm going to eventually be vulnerable with. It's just a matter of time until I feel right to do that. I'd like to say all of that is just going to happen without much effort. Because it's okay to sleep in. It's okay to not do the workout. It's okay to not set my morning up in such a way that I have a better routine and it's a better flow throughout my day, therefore, and a better setup for tomorrow. Because it's not that none of that's important, but how I ultimately feel deep down is most important. That surpasses all of that. And if I feel really good about myself, I'm going to take care of myself. Well, maybe I need to sleep more. And eventually what's going to happen is a routine's going to be established based off of not what I ultimately want to do with my life, but ultimately how I feel about myself. And because I'm feeling better about myself, I'm therefore going to set up a better routine. And it's not going to come from a place of this is what I want to do or this is going to be better for me, but rather it's going to be because this is how I feel about myself and this is what I want to do. So it all correlates deep down to this emotional resonance of yourself. And when it comes to relationships and stuff, what I'm finding is, I'd like to meet the one, or I'd like to, have this, whoever it would be. It's going to be a great relationship because eventually I'm going to open up and be this vulnerable person. No. If I'm already feeling good about myself, right? That means deep down I'm vulnerable to just be me, to just accept that I matter with nothing that I do or anything about me that matters other than just that. And what I'm realizing is I'm going to be more vulnerable naturally now. I'm not going to try to just be more vulnerable. I'm not going to, think, eventually I'll have a better relationship because I'm going to open up more. No. And none of that's perfect, by the way. I struggle with everything still, but I realize, when I'm more vulnerable, I'm more myself. And when I'm more myself, I find that I could connect with people easier. I feel like I get along with others so much better. I feel like, I don't know. No more kind of just being careful. Because here I am. I know myself more than I ever have. And that gives me the advantage to have a better relationship, to have a better connection, and it not be about, I'm looking for certain traits, or I'm looking for certain qualities, or I need this person to be like this, or I need the relationship to be like that. While all that's important, no doubt, ultimately to me what's important is it feels right to be with this person because this is how I feel about them. But it's not a projection from, they have all these ways about them, which I love. It's more so this is just how I feel about them because this is how I feel in general with my heart towards them. My heart and my feelings are more about me, how I can even just have them and connect to them, as opposed to it being about them. I don't see how you could have a heart or vulnerability or any emotional, like, deep connection with another if you don't have it with yourself. What you have for yourself is what you give to another. Otherwise, it's fake. Otherwise, it's it's whatever it is about you that you're giving to another. Otherwise, you're giving them a different representation or a different experience that you actually don't have, that you actually don't even have much experience of with just you. How long are you going to keep that up for? How could you keep doing that? It's like trying to be a certain way, but it's not completely natural to you. But you could still be a certain way. I think eventually that's going to get tiring. It's just not going to last, I don't think. So ultimately what I think is going to happen is I'm going to just be naturally connected to others where, they're more themselves, I'm more myself, and there's a good match with that. And if along the way, well, there's other traits or attributes or whatever the case may be, maybe their belief system or just what they think, how they think, it just doesn't match up, and it really causes a lot of conflict and will cause a lot of differences or even stress. I don't even think that's ultimately that bad, as long as you can work to some degree with that. But there may be non-negotiables about all that stuff, and I think that's fine. So it just doesn't work in that direction for you. But you can see it all started with the vulnerability. It didn't start with these things need to match up, and maybe they won't match up, and maybe they will. But what's the most important is how you ultimately feel about you to begin with.